The wind moved strangely through the pines that night, drifting in long, shivering waves as if pushed by something far larger than air. Ranger Daniel Crowe had worked the Bitterroot Wilderness for nearly 20 years, long enough to know the rhythms of the forest, how it breathed, how it settled, how it warned. But what he heard now did not fit any pattern he'd ever learned. It was a low, vibrating hum rising from the valley below him, like the groan of something waking from a long sleep. It made the hair on his arms stand up beneath his jacket. The call had come in just after dusk, another missing hiker. That made 3 in 2 months. The official story would later say the man wandered off trail, lost his bearings, and succumbed to the cold. Rangers would be instructed to use that language exactly: succumb to the cold, no elaboration, no speculation, no detail. Daniel already knew the script by heart. He also knew the truth rarely matched the paperwork. He parked the truck at the logging road gate, clipped on his radio, and began the climb into the trees. The forest swallowed him quickly, drowning out the world in darkness and a strange, pressing quiet. There were no insects, no owls, not even the soft patter of small animals moving through brush. This part of the woods had been dead silent on more than one incident report. None of those reports were ever made public. As he hiked, Daniel remembered the meeting from earlier that week: walls closed, blinds shut, 2 men in suits he didn't recognize sitting across from the Ranger Corps. They introduced themselves only as federal consultants. No badges, no department names, no insignias. They spoke in smooth, clipped tones about maintaining public confidence, about avoiding panic, and about misinterpretations of field evidence. The message was clear: whatever was happening in these forests was not to leave the chain of command. And even within the chain, it was to be discussed carefully. When one of the younger rangers asked about the shredded tents found last month, fabric torn as if by massive, clawed hands, the consultants exchanged a glance before calmly stating it was probably a bear. The ranger who asked the question had seen bear attacks before. They didn't look like that. But he nodded anyway. Everyone nodded. Daniel had nodded too. Now, in the dark, far from offices and fluorescent lights, the memory of that meeting tightened in his chest. He forced himself to steady his breathing as he reached the ridge line and scanned the slope below with his flashlight. The beam cut through fog drifting low between the trees. He saw nothing but trunks and shadows. Then he heard the hum again. Only now, it was layered, several tones at once, almost like several throats producing the same sound but slightly out of sync. It vibrated through the ground. It pressed against his ribs. And for a moment he could swear the forest itself seemed to lean away from it. He switched off his light and crouched. The instinct was primal, immediate, something older than training. The sound grew louder, closer. And beneath it, he heard something else: heavy, deliberate footfalls moving uphill. Twigs snapped, earth shifted, deep breaths pulsed through the darkness with a weight no man could produce. Daniel's hand hovered over his radio, but he didn't touch it. Radios weren't safe. Not here. He'd learned that 2 years ago during the Baker's Creek incident. Back then, a camper had radioed for help after something tore apart her partner's sleeping bag while she watched. She screamed descriptions that made no sense: eyes reflecting white, not yellow, a silhouette nearly 9 feet tall, arms long enough to drag knuckles through dirt. When she tried to give more detail, her transmission cut out. Mid-sentence. Not jammed, not static, cleanly cut. When rangers reached the site at dawn, the woman was gone. Her partner's body was found the next day, half a mile away, nearly unrecognizable. Official cause of death: blunt force trauma from an apparent fall. Unofficial truth: no fall could cause injuries like that. And no animal known to science left tracks shaped like the ones they found: massive, human-like, with elongated toes and a broad midfoot. Every ranger who responded had to sign an NDA afterward. Some transferred out of state. One quit the job entirely. The hum deepened, snapping Daniel back to the present. He slowly rose, stepping behind a boulder for cover. The fog thickened as if pulled upward from the soil. The temperature dropped several degrees in seconds. His breath puffed out in pale clouds. Then he saw something move between the trees. At first it looked like a shifting shadow, big, slow, purposeful. But then it stepped into a slant of moonlight, and its outline sharpened. It stood impossibly tall, towering above the undergrowth. Shoulders broad enough to eclipse the trunk behind it. Arms hanging long and heavy at its sides. Its fur was uneven, patchy in places, matted in others, dirt and pine needles clinging to it like a shroud. It walked on 2 legs, but not like a man. Its gait was smoother, heavier, more grounded, each step accompanied by a deep thud. Daniel forced himself not to move. The creature paused, sniffing the air. Its chest expanded with slow breaths that sounded like distant thunder. Then its head turned, suddenly, sharply, towards something deeper in the valley. Another call echoed through the trees. This one higher pitched, more urgent. Not a howl, not a roar, something else entirely. A warning, a summons. The creature answered with a rumbling grunt. Then it stepped forward and vanished into the fog, moving with a terrifying blend of power and silence. Daniel exhaled only when the forest swallowed the last trace of its movement. He should have turned back. He knew that. He should have called for backup, logged the sighting, followed protocol, even if every line of protocol had been rewritten to point away from the truth. But the missing hiker was still out here, somewhere beyond the ridge. And the creature wasn't heading away from that location. It was heading toward it. Daniel swallowed hard and followed. The descent into the valley was steep, the soil soft and damp beneath his boots. Several times he nearly slipped on loose stone. But fear sharpened his focus, pushing him onward. The fog thickened so much he could barely see more than a few feet ahead. He clicked his flashlight back on, the beam slicing through the swirling gray. He stopped abruptly. Footprints, fresh ones, pressed deep into the mud. Human. The hiker had passed this way. But beside those prints were others. Larger, much larger, each one nearly twice the length of Daniel's boot. Toes splayed wide, deep impressions from incredible weight. And spaced far apart, as if whatever made them moved with enormous strides. He knelt down, touched the edge of one. Still warm. A sudden crash of branches echoed through the trees ahead. Then a scream, sharp, raw, human. Daniel bolted forward without hesitation. The scream cut off abruptly, replaced by heavy breathing and the sound of something dragging across the ground. He sprinted through the undergrowth, heart pounding, flashlight bouncing wildly in the fog. He burst into a small clearing, and froze. The missing hiker lay on the ground, back against a fallen log, chest rising and falling in quick, panicked gasps. His clothes were torn, face streaked with dirt and blood. His eyes were locked on something in the tree line to Daniel's left. Daniel turned slowly. The creature stood half-shrouded in fog, its massive frame barely visible. But its eyes, two pale, ghostly reflections, cut through the darkness like cold fire. It wasn't attacking. Not yet. It was watching, studying both of them. The hiker whispered, voice trembling. It followed me, all night. It wouldn't let me leave. Daniel raised his hands slowly, palms forward, trying to appear non-threatening. He didn't know if the creature understood gestures, but he'd heard old stories, native accounts, trapper tales, that suggested these beings were intelligent, capable of reading body language better than some humans. The creature inhaled deeply, nostrils flaring. Then it stepped forward, the ground shuddering under its weight. Stay behind me, Daniel murmured to the hiker. But before he could take a single step, something else shifted in the fog to the right. A second silhouette, smaller, but still massive, emerged. Then a third. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the sparse moonlight. Daniel's stomach dropped. This wasn't one creature. It was a group. The humming sound returned, vibrating through the clearing as the shapes closed in, circling slowly. Not attacking, corralling, herding, positioning them. The hiker whimpered. They're surrounding us. Daniel held his ground, though every instinct screamed at him to run. He knew he wouldn't get far. Then, without warning, every radio on Daniel's belt crackled to life with a sharp burst of static. Unit 14, do not engage, a voice snapped, cold, precise, completely unfamiliar. Not anyone from his ranger station. Not any frequency he recognized. Daniel stiffened. The creature closest to him snarled, lips pulling back to reveal enormous teeth. It didn't like the noise. Unit 14, back away now. The group of creatures rumbled, a sound that shook the leaves on nearby branches. Their eyes flashed toward the forest behind Daniel, as if noticing someone new. Then a single gunshot cracked in the distance. Not from Daniel, not from any ranger. Something in the dark had just intervened. And everything in the clearing exploded into